Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see, is that better? Good evening. Before we begin this evening, I want to hit the highlights of the regulations that need to be considered during this meeting. Foremost, for the record, to reflect any speaker who wishes to speak for or against any application on the items on the agenda, each speaker must sign up to register their intent. If you do not register prior to the commencement of this meeting, you will not be called upon and you will not be allowed to speak. Each item shall be handled in the order of the published agenda. However, upon motion of the commission, it is possible that the order of the agenda may be changed. Therefore, it is recommended that all parties interested remain in the meeting in the event of the change in the order of the agenda. As each agenda item is brought forth, the city staff will present their application, the background of the property involved, and the provided recommendation. After the staff has presented the application, the applicant or the applicant's agent will give his or her presentation of the item. The applicant's time is limited to a total of 10 minutes. The applicant may designate any remaining time for rebuttal to any opposition of the application. All registered speakers who wish to speak in favor of the application will then be heard and will also be allowed a limit of 10 minutes total, not each. Once the applicant has made his or her presentation to the board and the pro-applicant speakers have been heard, the chair will then call upon registered speakers who wish to speak against the application. The opposition shall likewise be limited to 10 minutes total, not each. After the public comments have been heard, the Planning Commission members will then discuss the request among themselves. Upon motion and second by the members of the Commission, an action on the application may be taken. An action to approve, deny, withdraw, reduce the land area for which the application is made, or change the zoning district requested, or impose conditions. These matters are sometimes hotly contested and can result in highly adversarial positions among the participants in attendance. This meeting is not the place for such discussions. Rather, this is a meeting to hear the facts and the opinions as presented by all parties. Each public speaker will be called upon by the chair, and each speaker must address the chairman. Any conversations between the speaker and any other members of the audience not called upon by the chairman shall be deemed out of order. All speakers are expected to conduct themselves in an appropriate manner, and any involvement of personalities or the use of abusive or profane language will not be allowed. We do have a quorum tonight with one member present. Mr. Adolphus Gaither is not with us. We have the minutes before us from last month, which was the May 25th meeting. We've all had an opportunity to review those minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to either approve with changes or deny the minutes as published.
I recommend they be approved.
We have a motion to recommend approval. Do I hear a second?
Second the motion.
A motion is second on the floor. All those in favor signify by raising your hands. Aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimous. Thank you. The next item is public hearings. We have a public hearing for 353 Spring Street. It's a rezoning and sketch plan for the subdivision. Ms. Barber, I'm going to call upon you for the staff report, please.
Good evening, Chairman and Commission members. Tonight you have a application before you for a rezone and a sketch plan review for parcel ID SC170040, consisting of 46.9 acres, and it is 353 Spring Street. Rezone and sketch plan is requested for 353 Spring Street. The zoning of this property is currently an AG, agricultural zoning, consisting of the 46 acres, and the zoning request is to be rezoned to residential medium high density 1 and 2 family district. That is what the R&D zoning district is. This is the location. This is the site map. Parcel ID 170040 is 353 Spring Street. The owner is William and Carol Dukes under the trustee. This is our zoning map. Our zoning map at the present time is in the green where I've got that blue square right here. That is the AG property of the 46 acres north. It is zone RMD in the Historical District. To the east, it is RMD. To the west is RMD. And to the south, it is AG, agricultural. And that is a lower density residential zoning. Under our comprehensive plan, if you'll look in the site is in the yellow, that is the neighborhood character area. The comprehensive future land use map identifies this parcel in the residential character area. The application is to rezone the property from AG to RMD. The proposed subdivision consists of 46 acres. The proposed subdivision would consist of 138 single-family homes. The minimum lot size would be 6,000 square feet. Minimum house size would be minimum 1,600 square feet. This is 2.89 units per acre. The proposed road width is 24 feet. The front setback is 30 feet. The side setback is 10 feet, and the rear setback is 15 feet. The gross density proposed is 2.89 units per acre. The adjacent RMD lot sizes to the west and the north vary from 0.25 acres, that's 10,900 square feet, to 0.5 acres, which is 21,780 square feet. The smallest lots are in the Mill Village, north of Spring Street and east of Cannon Drive, or at least 5,000 square feet in size. The lot size proposed in this application is 6,000 square feet. There is a minimum home size in the proposed heating floor area, excluding the garage, of 1,600 square feet for one story and 1,750 square feet heated floor space for two-story type homes, including the following: at least 25% of the lots shall have homes with a minimum heated floor space, excluding the garage, of 1,750 square feet for one story and 2,000 square feet heated floor space for two-story type homes. The architectural standards proposed are to be: there shall be no manufactured homes or duplexes allowed, which is allowed under RMD zoning, but they are saying they would not allow that. Carriage-style garage doors with decorative hardware. All homes shall have not less than two-car garage. Architectural style asphalt shingles or metal roof as appropriate for the home. Exterior shall consist of brick, stone, cement base lap siding, cement base siding. Vinyl siding is prohibited, however, the soffits may be finished in vinyl. No above ground pools and this would need to be enforced by the HOA. Minimum interior on the car garage is 440 square feet. The proposed swimming pool and at least 2 tennis courts. The amenities are proposed to be finished prior to the recording of Phase 2 on the final plat. The HOA is proposing a cap on rental homes at 25%. The proposed project would be a 5 to 7 year project that would be developed in phases. The development is proposed in 2 phases, and the sketch plan requirements are included on your submittal plans. The utility plan. In the discussion with the City Public Works and Water Resource Department, there is sufficient capacity to provide sewer service to all 138 lots and the amenity area. Based on the topography, we can serve the entire site by gravity sewer via 3 separate tie-in points to the existing 16-inch line running down the stream on the property. The Public Works stated that the city has an existing sewer main that appears to run under lot 133, 132, and 131, lot 4 and 5. That would need to be addressed. The utility recommendations from the staff and the consultants. The city recommends looping the water from the 6-inch main at a wastewater treatment plant to a 6-inch water main on Spring Street, so there would not be any dead ends. The minimum is an 8-inch water main installed as noted in the plans. This will help reduce water main breaks and safer alternative. The system will be less valuable to the water main breaks, are vulnerable to the water main breaks, provide a great quality of water when it comes to firefighting, and there's less likelihood of water discoloration due to rust, organic matter, and other material that could accumulate over time, thus causing undesirable odors, taste, and discoloration. The roads should be wide enough to safely navigate public works vehicles and equipment, especially if there are cars parked along the roadway. The recommendations from the fire department. The sketch plan is showing a Phase 1 and a Phase 2 construction schedule. The exit on Chestnut will not be a regular exit with egress to Chestnut Street. Once the number of lots exceed 30 in Phase 1, this is under our City Ordinance 2020, Ordinance 11, and 2018, the IFC Code 503.4, obstruction of fire apparatus access on the roads. Number 2, the Chestnut Street will need to be widened to be able to support the operation of the fire apparatus and for needed turning apparatus radius of fire apparatus. 2018 IFC Section 503.1.2 additional access, and 2018 IFC Section 503.2 specifications. The connections point between Phase 1 and 2 appear to be a bridge or culvert over the creek. The method utilized to cross the creek will need to be able to support the weight of a fire apparatus of 78,000 pounds. The use of the speed bumps or traffic calming devices shall be prohibited unless approved by the fire code official. While the drawing does not discuss the utilities, the power line locations, we would request that they be completed as underground utilities. Obstructions such as utility and power lines shall not be located over aerial fire apparatus across roads or between the access road and the buildings. This is the city staff's presentation, and I will turn it over to Kevin, and he is the developer for the subdivision for the applicant. And we'll get his PowerPoint going here.
Thank you, Barbara. Are there any questions of staff? Do any of the planning commission members have questions for Barbara and the city at this point? If not, Kevin, whenever you're available, we'll start the public hearing and I'll start the time.
Application on Oak Drive that was ultimately denied by council. We were a little shocked by that vote. We had worked really hard on the development plan and proposed zoning conditions for the Oak Drive application. While we were really disappointed in the denial, we felt we had worked really well with the city, the staff, and all the residents. We thanked everyone and assumed, we may not be back in the very near future, but hoped down the road we would be able to work together again. And in March of this year, we stumbled into an introduction to the owners of this 46-acre parcel. After some discussion, we contracted the property with a plan to submit a rezoning application that mirrored our Oak Drive application as much as it could, most notably the difference being the reduced lot count from what our last application over on Oak Drive was. As mentioned in Barbara's presentation, we had initially submitted 138 lots. Our current site plans are actually down to 133 lots, and we are requesting to rezone from AG to RMD. This is almost half the total lots we presented last time. In addition to being consistent with the 2026 future land use map, the 46-acre parcel falls in the Imagined Social Circle Neighborhoods Character Area in the City of Social Circles Comprehensive Plan. The single-family development is consistent with the Neighborhoods Character Area by definition as a compatible zoning district as defined in the comp plan, and additionally we are proposing a plan that meets all 7 of the suggested implementation measures within this character area. Our natural thought was to establish conditions that would produce the same product that we had planned at Oak Drive. I want to read through the 10 proposed conditions that achieve this. Condition number 3 is actually a list of 16 sub-items that are architectural conditions specific to the requirements to each home. These include all the conditions that we worked really hard on last time, including sub-items M, N, O, and P that were derived from conversations with this Planning Commission last fall. I'm just going to, for the sake of time and not to be repetitive, read the remaining conditions that Barbara had not listed in that presentation. Condition 1 would be the total lot count shall not exceed 133 lots. Within condition number 3, the sub-items C, all overhangs shall include gables and side gables, which will have a minimum of a 12-inch overhang on all sides. Sub-item D, the developer shall use a variety of techniques to avoid the monotonous appearance of identical homes. Such techniques may employ, among others, the use of differing front elevations, architectural styles, building exteriors, and other similar techniques so that no house is the same as any house directly in front or on either adjacent side of it. For houses directly in front or on either side, adjacent side, mirrored or reverse front elevations shall not be considered adequate to fulfill this requirement. Sub-item E is all homes shall have at least one 12-inch house and foundation offset in the front. Sub-item F is the exterior materials for all homes shall consist of brick, stone, cement-based lap siding, cement-based siding panels, cedar, and or shake. Sub-item G, the front facade of all homes shall have a minimum of 45% brick, stone, and or shake with accents such as, but not limited to, hardy plank lap siding. Sub-item I, all roof vents, pipes, and other roof equipment shall be located on the rear elevations and shall be painted to match the color of the roof. Sub-item M, each house shall contain at a minimum 15% clear glazing for windows or doors on the front elevation. Sub-item O, the rear and side elevations shall be of the same construction quality and exterior color as the front. Where multiple exterior materials are used in a single structure, they shall only be combined on each facade horizontally with the heavier materials at the bottom. And sub-item P, the side and rear elevations of homes to contain a brick or stone water table, matching the front elevation masonry material. The water table shall be established from finished lot grade to the bottom of the first floor windows, or at least 30 inches in height, whichever is lower. Number 5 was the stormwater pond on the north side of the stream, as shown on zoning site plan in Exhibit A, must have an operating fountain. Number 6, developer shall establish an HOA and cause a declaration of covenants and restrictions to be recorded, subjecting all 46.09 acres to the HOA and ensuring the maintenance of all amenities and HOA common areas as applicable. Jumping to number 8, the developer shall contribute $500 per lot to Social Circle City Schools. This payment shall be made prior to recording a final plat as lots are recorded. Number 9, no proposed lots or roads shall have a studied 100-year flood limit within the boundaries and or right-of-way. And number 10, the developer shall provide easements and or dedicate a minimum 10-foot wide path for the Social Circle Greenway from Willow Drive, from Spring Street to the southeastern edge of the property along the stream as shown in zoning site plan A. This easement and or dedication of the proposed section of the Social Circle Greenway shall satisfy all requirements of the developer as it relates to the Social Circle Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan 2020. This shall be dedicated at the time of the first final plat recording. Ultimately, we had 5 concerns we felt had been addressed. Again, I'm referring back to it's been so recent and so similar to the Oak Grove application. This application tonight has inherently maintained or improved all of those solutions that had been provided on the last one, and I'll just touch on them real quick. Number 1, noise from industrial. This site is a significant distance from Standridge Color, and therefore this concern is actually not even a concern in this application. Number 2 is rent restrictions. We've carried over and maintained a proposed condition that will cap the allowable rental percentage at the 25%. For sewer, I think touched on by Barbara, although we confirmed last time there was adequate capacity, this time around we are needing even less capacity, and the sewer capacity, as staff indicated, is more than sufficient, so the sewer should not be an issue. Traffic, Here's another item that is greatly improved, in our opinion, from the last application. A traffic impact analysis conducted by Traffic Impact Group LLC in September 2020 was provided to us by the city via an open records request. The following is just an excerpt from the summary and conclusion page on that report. Analysis shows that the intersections are projected to function acceptably under full build-out conditions. The access connection to Spring Street is projected to see a level of service A at all times of the day. There's no need for a second connection to Spring Street. No improvements are recommended. We have a few less lots we're proposing than what was proposed within that report that was done. So I think, if anything, it, again, even just improves from that summary. We also provided staff our own trip generation report last week, and I don't know if it had time to get to you, but it showed slightly less trips than the Traffic Impact Group LLC analysis showed, obviously correlating to the fact that we have a few less lots. So if anything, again, it should be an improvement from what those conclusions showed. I think in the end, just if I'm going to keep comparing to the previous application, we had a lot of concerns at the other application with some of the roadways that would be used for access to that development. Here, accessing on Spring Street with the access to South Cherokee, to East Hightower, and even Cannon, all having access to Highway 11, I think it's just a substantially better situation, let alone the fact that we have lower traffic counts in general for the substantially lower number of lots. And then lastly, the other concern was just the number of homes. And as we've already mentioned, we're proposing 55% of the total lot count we had proposed last at the mayor and council on our other application. So we're just continuing to drive down the total lot count that hopefully is more, viewed as a better option than what our last application was. In summary, before I say that, I guess I will just touch on a couple notes from Barbara's presentation. We understand and are agreeable to the Chestnut Street improvements that she had mentioned that staff commented on, along with the requirements for the creek crossing and underground power. And in summary, before I stop to save any remaining time, I just would like to say that we urge you to recommend, or to vote to recommend approval for this request based on, number one, our willingness to work with the city and all of our neighbors, as shown through our actions really over the past 12 plus months. Number two, our willingness to agree to the 10 proposed conditions of zoning, one of which actually consists of 16 sub-architectural conditions. Number three, the fact that we have improved the full build-out situation relative to the industrial noise, the sewer, the traffic, and the total lot count. And number four, because we are in substantial compliance with the city's comprehensive plan. We would like to reserve, which doesn't sound like we have any more time, so again, thank you, and we can answer any questions.
Seifert, if you wouldn't mind staying there may be some questions. Let them dive in.
I've got one. I may have more. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's 1,326 daily trips in your study?
So, total 24-hour two-way trips,
Right.
which is every trip, every which way, would be 1,352 from our trip
52.
generation report,
Okay,
1,352.
in a 24-hour period.
Two-way 24-hour period,
Okay.
that's
What
right.
are you planning on doing on Chestnut? Because Chestnut is a little pig path. It's like one-lane dirt road.
Sure.
Now, if you're going to widen it, how you going to do that?
So, and I don't want to speak for staff or the comments, but our understanding is that per fire exit requirements, we
Right.
would need to have that access. And we are open to and willing to improve that street as much as necessary to achieve that minimum requirement. We believe access off of Spring Street will be number one access. We'll have an entrance directly off Spring Street.
Right.
And then we'll also have a proposed entrance that would
But we're looking at 22 feet widening, is that right? Widen it to about 22, that's what I.
For the
what I'm
minimum,
hearing.
yeah, and I do,
Minimum.
so
And
we've
that's-
driven it and
Yeah,
examined it and looked at the topography. We do think that is definitely achievable, although right now I agree, its current condition is,
right.
needs love.
Yeah, it needs a lot of love.
Yeah, right.
So that would affect the people in the neighborhood that have backup property to that street. If, I don't think that you've got 22 feet of property to work with unless you pay somebody some money to take half their backyard or whatever, or take a portion of their backyard. I don't know how it's going to work that way. Because
So-
you've got houses on both sides. Anyway,
So-
that was my question, and that's my opinion, and I'm welcome to it. Thank you.
If we could propose that if you found this to be something you were willing to recommend approval on with an additional condition, is that the responsibility to obtain any necessary easements would be our responsibility. We would understand and take on that responsibility.
So I see that there is an emergency access point off of Kane Avenue, which is already a paved road. So what makes Chestnut Street so attractive, or Chestnut Drive?
And my apologies if it's not, it probably isn't clearly presented. We are fine for both to be emergency access only if that's what those residents and this city feel is the best. We're also open to it being either way. Our desire is to say that we want to work with the city, and we think it makes sense to be emergency access only so that it limits the traffic on those streets for those neighbors. And we're open to that if that's, again, something that maybe, if there was a recommendation of approval with another condition, we would be agreeable to both being emergency access only. We just know that we have to provide those access points per the ordinance.
So it's possible that Chestnut Drive could become an emergency access point only, and Kane Avenue would be a secondary entrance to the subdivision?
So we're open to having one main entrance
Right.
off Spring Street because we think that makes sense.
And I understand that.
And both the second, we'll call it Kane Avenue and Chestnut, could be emergency only. At the same time, we understand we need to work with how the ordinance reads and with fire and with everyone at the city. And we would accommodate either way. And even if Chestnut and Kane were emergency only, we understand there would still be improvements probably required on Chestnut.
And there'd be a hard way of limiting it to emergency only unless you put somebody there at the intersection.
Right, how are you gonna make sure that the Kane Avenue stays emergency only?
So we often have circumstances like that where we create a gated entrance with a Knox box, and so all safety, whether it's fire, police, have keys for those. It's a common practice with the Knox box, so they would have access, but it would eliminate the ability for others to just freely use it. It would be gated and locked.
So
Okay.
if I'm going to interrupt, sorry.
No, go right.
Valerie and Mike on this. I think the kind of diving into the weeds, and this is good. The idea with that gating it and putting a Knox box to prevent access, but one way, whoever holds the key, and that'd be the fire and police and EMS that have key, have the Knox code. Then you come into a dilemma that you don't have an adequate radius on the internal street. It'd almost be a kind of a stub street. You can't get out. I think in the scope of things, if things progress in the manner that's in the applicant's favor, I think the idea that he proposed is that access or the developer be responsible for acquiring the necessary easements and dedicating a right-of-way along Chestnut from Spring to their entrance would be the probably the preferable way to go from a public safety and city standpoint. I'm not speaking for the city. I'll let obviously the chief speak on that behalf, but I know from experience, when you get into situations where you have a public street and then it's gated with a Knox access, you come into a lot of situations and issues of having accessibility, and that's not always the best thing to do for accessibility. If you got people who are in there, you need to get those people out of there. And you got 3 points of primary access. Obviously, with Spring Street being their primary entrance,
Right.
most people use Spring Street. I think those who will access Kane are the ones who live closest to that access point. People who would use Chestnut are the individuals who live closest to that access point. That would just be my human nature thinking, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I just didn't know that all of them would be,
Primary.
like if we would end up making Chestnut have the Knox box on it, and then Kane would be a secondary. And then my second question is, there's a lot of areas where this neighborhood butts up to established residences. Other than the zoning requirement, what sort of buffer, if any, is planned there?
In this application, we have not presented a buffer. We are definitely open to that. Whether it be proposed here, or we could, like off the top of my, I mean, I can tell you right now, if you said, hey, we'd like to see a 10-foot undisturbed buffer, and if it's an area that doesn't have adequate screening, there would be supplemental plantings. I think that's something we would be agreeable to. I think anything beyond that, we just need to make sure we have the room to do it, which, again, I don't want to keep throwing out like tons of additional conditions for y'all to throw on there, but if you did recommend approval with that, we'd be happy to agree to the 10, and we could look into even more between now and mayor and council if that's a desire from this board.
Okay. And then my last question is, I heard something that I thought it said that there is a sewer main that runs under some of these lots.
Yes.
What is the plan there?
So there is a section that we would propose that we relocate that main, which is a practice we do, I'll call it fairly often. We would have to get that approved, and if we didn't get that approved through the land disturbance permit process, then we would have to work around those, which ultimately, in a worst case, would mean we would lose lots. But we understand that, and we would be governed by the process of the land disturbance permit application.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm just listening to everybody say what they say, and I'm looking at this map, and it's the 46 acres. Given these variables, are you married to this plan as far as that number of houses laid out in that specific way? Or is there a possibility that in order to incorporate some of these various issues that we could possibly look at another map of how the road goes through here and the lot numbers that we have? I know you've already come down from 38 to 138 to 133, but we've got these 5 at the front of the subdivision where you want the main entrance to be off of Spring that have the sewer issue. You've got these other ones that go around with the neighbors, and having to think about a buffer. You've got the issue with the easement up on Chestnut that's a possibility. You've got the radius issues with the secondary entrances. If you are dealing with an entrance on Kane, you could back off the lots there at Kane to give yourself a better option to build the road out and everything else there. Chestnut, you don't have to build all those ones in your area up to that our side of Chestnut that you're wanting to build to, so that you can deal with your expansion and everything else. And the second, and on top of that, it just seems like it's all crammed in. You know what I mean? I just feel like it's all being shoved into this one area with all these various issues. Plus, you've got the wetlands that make it. You're already losing that space because of the wetlands. You can't build on it. I'm just wondering if that's not something that, if we talk about, say, hey, I want this buffer between existing homes and new. Can we is it something y'all could possibly look at and maybe come up with a secondary layout with the way these things are done, to see if that answers everybody's questions, but also gives you the maximum number of houses that you're wanting to put in there, given circumstances.
So I think a lot of these items are things that we think are typically worked through at length through a land disturbance permit process.
Sure.
And ultimately can lead to loss of lots.
And that's just what I'm wondering. I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if y'all are open to that,
So,
because I mean, that would certainly
We're
make a
definitely open to it. I think
direction change.
my gut reaction would be we would prefer to have a condition that says we're required to make sure we meet all auto turn radius requirements with the fire department, that we need to give a buffer to, we could identify neighboring property owners. And basically say, if we can achieve all those things and maintain the lot count, just being honest, that would be our preference. But we know that we may lose those in the process. But sometimes full engineering can take, it's a months-long
as long as-
process with
as long
back
as
and
you're
forth
movable-
with reviewers.
As long as y'all are movable, I mean, that's mainly what I'm trying to get to is.
Yeah, no,
So-
yeah, I mean, yes,
Okay.
yes.
I have a question about Chestnut. I'm familiar with that particular street. And looking at the drawing and all, it's a lot of houses coming around that way. And you're saying it's going to be gated? It's not going to be one of the main entrances?
So our desire is to propose a main entrance on Spring Street. I think sometimes, and it's not just the city of Social Circle, it's any municipality, likes to see more flow of traffic, and of course, fire likes to see additional entrance or exits. And in doing so, while it improves maybe flow of traffic, it sends some traffic towards other neighbors who wouldn't see that traffic. Which is why I was just saying, we fully understand that should the city be agreeable that both could be fire only, accessed by Knox boxes, but meet all the minimum returns, which may not be desirable, we would be open to that because we understand some neighbors might say, hey, that we'd rather see that. At the same time, if we improve Chestnut to that entrance, you know, from our entrance to Spring Street is a few. I had to look back at the parcel. I don't know if it's more than 4 properties. We'd have to look at it. It's a relatively low number of properties, and we would be improving that street that they're on, so we could see it beneficial either way.
Can I make it, be honest?
Yeah.
If I bought house number 70, I would prefer to come out on Chestnut because that's a nice little ride around.
Right, right.
But my question is, what if house number 98, 77, and 91, or some of the rest of them want to come out like I do? And you never know when it might be an emergency or something. You're thinking of making Spring Street the main entrance.
Mm-hmm.
To me, Chestnut, it's a small little street. It needs to be bigger to me. If a lot of cars are gonna be coming in and out of that traffic, you know, a lot of.
So I guess I think the best way to answer it is, we are open to the requirement to improve Chestnut. And if that includes the requirement to obtain easements or right-of-way, that's a task we're willing to take on. So we do, I understand what you mean by it. It can't just be a small skinny road if it's gonna have that much traffic. And if there's a preference for us to establish, I don't want to be too, we're trying to accommodate that we have probably differing opinions on whether or not they should be emergency only or full access. And so we're trying to balance how to figure out which side to go with. Does that make sense?
Well,
We got two probably sides of that.
Mr. Seifert, if you don't mind, our fire chief, Zadell, is here. Chief Zadell, I want to put you on the spot if you don't mind, sir. If you wouldn't mind coming up, and you had a influence in a recent ordinance that was adopted regarding access points and when a certain number of access points is required, triggered by number of lots, number of units. For clarification purposes, and I get this confused sometimes myself, can you explain when certain number of access points are required, things of that nature?
I would be glad to try without having the ordinance in front of me to actually read it verbatim. What triggers the second requirement is after your first application, council reset how many residents or how many lots you could have in a subdivision without requiring a second means to get out. And after that, after a certain number, it trips and requires a third. The reason that the second access is required in this property is it's built in phase 1 and phase 2, assuming that all of phase 1 is going to be built before phase 2 is started. Once he actually records 30 lots or starts his 30th house, when he starts number 31, it'll require a second access point. That becomes the Chestnut access point. Based on how it's drawn and the red being phase 1, when I did the plan review on it, after he does number 30, it will require Chestnut Street to be a working access. It's not an emergency access, it's got to be accessible all the time. No different than when he does phase 2, the numbers will trip again, and it will require that the access on the lower end be a working access, not a gated access. And looking at Chestnut Street, when we did the plan review, of course, Chestnut Street is, as Mr. Griswold said, is fairly small, so it would require some improvement in the being able to turn a fire truck down it and being able to operate the larger vehicles with the concern of how it comes into Spring Street and width of the road in general, and then turning radius into that second. So it's not geared to be an emergency exit. That second exit becomes a traveled exit. And again, if you think about the reason we did the exits, and we did that, it follows fire code that requires additional exits after a certain number. But the second part is if we were to be right in the front of this subdivision and we had, say, a working structure fire on a Sunday morning and everybody wanted to get out and go to church, then if there's only one way to get out, they're stuck until we're done. So the idea behind having that many lots is if something was to happen, even if you were to have a tornado or something come by and you had massive amount of damage, there's a second way to get people in and out of a subdivision.
Thank you, Chief. Not knowing phase 1 and phase 2, 133 lots. Do you recall off the top of your head, and I know that's a dangerous place to pull things, how many total points of access would be required for 133 lots?
I believe it's going to be 2.
Okay, so potentially, and this is just theoretically, we're talking about the kind of a proposed site plan. Getting a little bit off topic on the zoning, but that's okay because it's going to cover both. Potentially, if the access road from Spring is the main point of access, the main driveway, and the development went down across the creek and came out on Kane Avenue, that would be potentially phase 1 if the developer chose 2 points of access already. And then instead of taking a point of access to Chestnut, that potential road leg could loop back around and make a 4-way intersection right there off the main road coming off Spring. And he would only be required 2 points of access. And this is definitely not putting you on the spot saying that that's all he has to have, but potentially 133 lots may only require 2 points of access. Double check the ordinance to find out. Is that correct?
I believe so without actually reading and seeing it laid out. I believe you're right. You could get by with 2 if you had the roadway to phase 2 established where you had the Kane access.
Yes, sir. And I think we're all in agreement there that if you connected in the first phase, connect Spring with your internal road, cross the creek and come down at Kane, that may be the best case scenario for all parties involved, because you have your multiple points of access. You don't have to worry about coming back at a later time. You could plat the 30 lots, or you can plat 60 lots, and you still have your 2 points of access. But nonetheless, for the record's sake, Chestnut doesn't have to be used. There's alternative ways to design the site to where Chestnut is left alone.
I would agree to that, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other questions for Chief Zadell? Thank you. If there's no other questions of the applicant at this time, and there'll be another time to ask, I'd like to open up the public hearing. We do have some people who have signed up. We will call those speakers who are signed up to speak in favor of this request, and I'll call Susan Farrow. And Ms. Farrow, thank you. You're the only one signed up to speak. You have a total of 10 minutes if you'd like to speak a
Well, I
total.
won't take that long. Good evening, I'm Susan Farrow, and if you know of me, you may also know that I'm a Realtor. In my capacity as a Realtor, all I would like to say is that Social Circle is in desperate need of more housing, and this caliber of housing, this type of housing, we're in desperate need of. So that's all I want to say on that, with that hat on. What I really wanted to get up and talk about was that I have been a resident of the City of Social Circle for 26 years and have spent the last 17 years as a homeowner and resident at 836 South Cherokee Road. So I am a proud resident of District 2. This proposed development is right around the corner from my house. I'm very excited about it. First of all, I'm excited about just the idea of being able to share Social Circle. I love Social Circle. I'm happy to have more people move here and enjoy this great little town just the same way that I do. I think specifically District 2 would benefit greatly from a development of this type and this price point. I think we would all in our area benefit from this and we would see it as an increase in all of our property values. So, we've seen some other neighborhoods go in other areas in town, so I would be very excited to see something like this go in in our district. So that's all I wanted to say about that tonight. Thank you for your time.
So I definitely share those concerns, that particular piece of property with the existing roadways and even with improvements. That's going to be a lot right there. They're very small lots. I feel like it is not wholesale much different than what we just discussed last month as far as lot size and maybe slightly less density. But I feel like the housing survey that we've completed, I know in more urban areas are going towards smaller lots, higher density. I don't feel like that's, what people have told us they want here based on what's been completed so far. We're kind of a little bedroom community, and overwhelmingly it seems like people have asked to stay that way. This is a lot. It will, with 133 homes, that's going to put another probably 300 kids in our schools. It's going to be another 133 homes that have to exist with water and sewer in that area. I live in that area. We do have some water pressure problems. I'm not sure that particular lot size and that particular type of housing is a great fit for that piece of property.
Question, and I don't know if it necessarily pertains just to this, but I'm seeing in requests that we're going to limit 20% to rental, 25% to rental. Is there a rule that requires that?
Sir, there's not a rule, and you heard Barbara say that is something that the HOA would have to monitor. Covenants are civil agreements between property owners. HOA rules are only as strong as the HOA can enforce them.
Yeah.
So as far as a condition of zoning, no, sir. The city, and we can't recommend, the city cannot place a condition that would say no more than X number of homes can be rental, because that would be a violation of the Fair Housing Act. While it's kind of a loose violation, it is that nonetheless. So while the property owners can do that, the government cannot force that. Is it a rule that they do that? No, sir, it's not. It's not an ordinance either. This is something I believe, and I don't want to definitely put words in Mr. Seifert's mouth, but that was something that we heard from previous public hearings from the community. And while it sounds good to say we're going to limit this, we're going to put it in the covenants that they can't do this, in reality, that's difficult, if not impossible, to enforce. Yes, there's a lot of homes being built in a lot of jurisdictions, and maybe some that are being built right here in Social Circle that are for the sole purpose of rental. I'm aware that Henry County and Stockbridge and communities there, Conyers, Covington, you've got developers building 30, 40 lot subdivisions, 100 lot subdivisions, and transferring those lots at the final plat to a holding company that just puts people that rent in.
Right.
Nothing wrong with renters. People have to live somewhere. If you can qualify for the rent, by all means enjoy it. Not everybody wants to own a home, but it's one of those that does it degrade your quality of life as a community? Some people say yes, and some people say no. I don't want to get into that discussion tonight because that's going to make us stay here a lot longer than we probably should.
Thank you.
But it's one of those that
withdraw my question.
Yeah, but it's one of those that no, sir. It is not a rule that limiting the number of rentals is not something that is a rule.
I do have one additional question, I think. Is the Pacific Group going to take this all the way from acquisition to the for sale sign in the front yard, or will they prep the lots and then sell the property?
We are a developer only, so our business is to develop and sell lots to builders. So we would sell, I think you just phrased it, we would develop the community, but then sell the lots to a builder who would build the home, and they would have the for sale sign.
So you would say, we've prepped this lot, you as a builder can buy 5, 10, 15, 20, here's the conditions that the city wants.
Yeah, and I think, we stand before many different boards, councils. Conditions of zoning help establish a look and a architectural style so that it doesn't matter which builder. Of course, certain builders may have better quality, whatnot, but in the end, they're gonna be building a product that will be seen the same. And so I think those conditions are where we are able to commit. It doesn't matter who ends up building those homes. Because even though we could tell you, builders we work with and who, we could even sit here and say, look, we would be happy to work with this builder in this community. It's impossible for us to guarantee it just because of the nature of any economy. We'd be lying if we could guarantee it. So of course,
Okay.
I think we just have to rely on conditions rather than who would build.
Okay. It's not the Pacific Group, though.
We're not correct. We don't build homes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Seifert, before you get too comfortable, and that you guys only put the infrastructure in the ground and sell the lots, in this climate, it's probably large regional, if not wide builder who's buying most of the lots that are available in today's market. With that said, zoning condition item 3G talks about the front facades of all homes have the minimum of 45% brick, stone, and or shake with accents. Knowing that you guys are not the end builder, how problematic would that be if that were to be reworded a little bit that just says all elevations of homes shall have a minimum of 40% brick, stone, such and such, such and such, instead of listing just the front? And I say that, let me give you the reason why. Oftentimes, subdivisions where you do have the front of the house has one appearance, and then as soon as you, I think my microphone may be going. As you pass it, you see the side of the house is and it wraps around the rear, and you kind of get this false. But also, the second stage of that reasoning is that, again, with going with the masonry units such as brick or stone, it also, we understand, increases that price point just a little bit more. And while you're at in that range of 16 to 1,800 square foot homes, as Ms. Walhart said, we are a bedroom community, and I think what that housing study is going to reflect on us is that we want to stay that upper echelon bedroom community, and attract people who are going to be positive impacts within our community and participate in our community, because we all are proud to live here, whether we grew up here or whether we moved here, like Ms. Farrow 17 years ago. We're all proud to be here, and we want to see that next to be better than that last stage. That makes sense.
We're not opposed to agreeing to some reduced lots, to changes. I do think O and P help establish a bit of consistency as a house wraps around, like you had mentioned.
And we
I think that was some of the intent.
Might be able to do away with one or both of those if they're fighting.
I think we'd even be open to slightly increased minimum square footages. The only thing I'll say about the 40% all the way around, I'll just use today, it's very popular right now for a farmhouse style look, which arguably can, especially with today's wood costs, can even be more expensive than just 40% brick. We would, if there's a way we could do maybe half the homes have to have 40% of the brick, but it allows for the ability to have, to
Build
build
that-
a nicer looking home that's just not constricted to such a specific line of brick. It's hard to do 40% brick without it being, you're going to have one level of brick, and then I'm worried it could look almost goofy.
Okay.
If that makes sense, but I mean, we're typically not huge into tabling. I'm worried it'd be hard to like come up with an exact answer right now, but I think we want to work towards that. We spent a lot of time here, and I know I kept referring to the last application. That's not what tonight's about. But I think the only point to that was the reasons you love Social Circle, for those of you who are born and raised here, for those who've lived here for quite a long time but want to see some of this, is the same reasons we want to, develop and build here. People, I think, are attracted to Social Circle, and if we can build a community that meets a lot of the desires to have some new construction, yet not, I'm familiar with some neighborhoods maybe in here that people don't want to see happen again. We fully get it, and we would be committed to working towards that. And again, last thing we want to do is take more time, but if that's necessary, we'd rather do that than just end where we ended last time.
Sure. And we have two real estate agents here, and in our audience, and it's pretty impressive that, both of them, well, I think one of them left. You're right. Circle Circle is a destination city. We've got people who are I'm sure my colleagues here and those who live here have been cold calls from agents wanting to
Buy the house.
properties.
Yeah.
Places. Social Circle is a desirable city, and yeah, that makes sense as to why you came back to Social Circle to have a deal, and we appreciate that.
And I don't know if it's proper for me to throw this out there, but even to the extent of your loop idea was, I think we would receive well. And if indeed we don't go over the threshold for the third entrance, maybe a redesign of the site plan. We can work on some slightly larger lots, some amended architectural conditions. Would make it easier for this board to make a recommendation rather than trying to just force it through. We're all for a recommendation of approval if you want to tonight, but
Well, and that's what I was kind of getting to, I guess, on my situation,
Yeah.
is that I see this lot and I see some alternative possibilities along with some lots that may be a little bit larger than this, but not getting too far away from it, because there are some people that are excited about what this brings, and there's people from all walks of life that want to not cut any grass at all, to want to bale hay. So I mean, you've got to find some way to meet them, and if we can come up, if we can have some sort of generic agreement that this can be reworked to compromise with the things that we've expressed, things that our neighbors have expressed. I mean, I definitely think that I see a win there. And as far as what you were mentioning, I think, because you're basically talking about the vinyl siding going around and all that stuff, like, because I know that they put in here that vinyl siding is prohibited, but I'm just trying to understand that.
A lot of times you see a brick or stone front, and then as you pass, you see the horizontal hardy board running down the
Yeah.
side. It's like, what happened?
The continuity.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
happened?
continuity, yeah.
Running
So,
and I completely understand Mr. Seiferd's concern. He wants to be able to provide the end buyer, the builder, the flexibility to be able to build the houses that are within their repertoire and that they know their price point and what
Right.
they build. Barbara.
Now it works.
Okay, well, maybe I
Just
still need
talk
to
loud.
That's what y'all are trying to tell me. I need to shut up. Barbara, remind me, and I'm sorry, what is the lot size for
15,000 square feet, something like that. About double to triple.
Is there we do not have a district that has a lot size between R&D and R15.
No, sir, we don't. The lowest is the RMD, the smallest, and then the next is the R15. It's just the RMDs, it is hard for people to have storage buildings on those lots because they are smaller.
But
The
maybe we could work
R15
on a minimum, like, we can still, in the RMD district, establish conditions that would find that middle ground. If that makes sense. We can establish a condition with a minimum square footage that would be greater than the allowable. So it allows us to still build under 15,000, but get closer to it, and that kind of thing, if that would be, again, something we could kind of work towards when we revamp this. A thought, just a thought.
I would be much more open to larger lots, a little bit more square footage.
I like the two access areas. I'll just forget about Chestnut. That's, to me, is going to be really hard to work.
Mhm.
Exactly. Exactly. Get trees going up there.
Mm.
Right. If we're seeing the same thing, I get it, right.
Well, so the item is a rezoning and sketch plan for subdivision. And Barbara, do you foresee or are you aware of any violation of our zoning ordinance if we were to have one item, address it, and table the other?
Yes, sir, you can't have one without the other. They were simultaneously,
Okay.
and it's in the ordinance.
I'm glad I asked you then. Thank you so much.
And I do want to state, in our ordinance, it says 0 to 30 is one access.
Okay.
31 to 200 is two accesses.
Okay.
So they could rework that to not have to use Chestnut.
Okay, so, I think, were there any staff concerns when they reviewed this, Ms. Barbara, about the zoning or only about the layout layout and accessibility.
The only concerns that the zoning staff had was we get a lot of calls pertaining to traffic issues, or used to, on small lots, because if you don't have a lot big enough to put a storage building, then they park in the street and they use their garage for their storage house because they cannot meet the setbacks. Even on an RMD zoning, you got to be 15 feet off the back and 10 feet off the side. Well, that puts your storage building right at your back door. And you got to be 10 feet from your house when you have an accessory structure. That's the biggest concern that staff had, was if they are, and RMD only requires 6,000 square feet. But when you're building for families or children that want a swing set and a storage building, it's really hard because the parents have to put all this stuff in their garage. And then they park on the street, and then that causes utility issues with the trucks, the trash truck, fire truck, can't get down through those streets. Now, the streets are wide enough in this proposal. Under the state law,
Yep.
they only require this width.
Yep.
But
We've got that currently in the subdivision I live in.
yes, you do, and
And
it's
it-
R15.
And it's R15, and we have larger lots, so I completely understand the calls and complaints that you guys received, or still do within various areas of the city. We certainly don't want to compound those problems when we don't have to. But as far as any other transportation review, our city engineer, they didn't see an issue with accessibility.
No, sir, the only comment that our engineer made was about Chestnut, that Chestnut would need to be widened. It would need to be 24 feet wide, and the skew right there at Spring Street would
Turn.
need to be improved.
Okay. What about the water pressure in the area? When the Public Works looked at it, they indicate to you, or are you aware if a loop system is performed, would that increase pressure for the residents in the area?
They did not tell me if it would increase pressure. They just said a possibility of looping the water for the 6-inch main at the wastewater treatment plant to a 6-inch water main on Spring Street so that there would be no dead ends. And this would reduce the water main breaks and have a safer alternative. Now, Robbie Groves, our Public Works Director, is here if she would like to address any more issues or more concerns that she knows about the water pressure. Okay. Well, and I got the report from Precision Planning, did our review, and they did not say anything about the water pressure because Mr. Parker came to our meeting last month and actually explained how water pressure works in Social Circle, about the elevations. And it's just the way the elevation goes. It's not going to improve the pressure. You will be able to improve the flow. So that flow with that loop would help the flow, but not the pressure. And he reported, I think it's supposed to be 45 to 50 PSI once the loop system was done, and that's really good. I get 32 at my house on North Cherokee, so that's not bad.
Okay. I appreciate that. Planning Commission members, we've got a request to rezone this 46.09 acres from AG to RMD and to approve the sketch plan. I think we all have an idea in mind, or some ideas in mind. I think the applicant has shown that his willingness to work with it. Barbara did confirm to us that we can't have the zoning without the sketch plan. We can't have the sketch plan without the zoning. Hearing what I'm heard tonight from you guys, I don't think this is something, as it stands, the RMD with the long list of conditions the applicant is proposing and the sketch plan, it doesn't sound like it's something favorable to this commission at this time. There may be other opportunities. We do have a couple options, as I stated when I read the rules of the public hearing, and I'll read those again. The Planning Commission may take one of these items, or may take one of these actions: to approve the request, to deny the request, to allow the applicant to withdraw, to reduce the land area for which the applicant has made, to change the zoning district being requested, or to impose the conditions, or impose conditions. So we could make the recommendation to the city council to approve it as it is or to deny it. We don't have the ability within our ordinance to table it, but what we could do is recommend denial because it's not quite where we're comfortable with. City council can then make their decision to approve or deny or allow withdrawal, and so on and so forth, just like the Planning Commission. Or we could make a recommendation to amend the zoning to R15 or any other zoning category within the zoning ordinance. I think it possibly don't know what the city council will do. That's not our decision to make. Thankfully, we're just a recommending body. But seeing the issues tonight and seeing the sketch plan has a lot of, I don't want to say work, but has a lot of options to it to change, to reduce some of the concerns that we have and that staff has, to get a better product out of it. Chair will entertain a motion to do one of those items. I have a voice again. So at this point, I do thank the applicant, and I appreciate his willingness to work within the ordinance and within the flexibility that we're trying to provide as we navigate these waters. Maybe there is a happy medium between a 6,000 square foot lot that provides him 133 lots versus a 15,000 square foot lot that would only provide him 70-something lots. It is a possibility that it's zoned RMD with a condition that no lot should be smaller than 10,000 square foot. So we could place that condition on that. Conditions run with the land. It runs with the property, whether it's the Pacific Group or whether it's ABC developer. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Barbara, in our zoning ordinance, if a zoning action is denied by the mayor and council, is there a waiting period before the applicant can reapply or the property can be reapplied for?
Yes, sir. If the mayor and council, or the council denies it and they do not withdraw it, then it's a year before
Okay.
you can present another plan. But if you withdraw it, then they can come back the next month with a different plan.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that. Mr. Seifert, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you honestly understand our dilemma here because your willingness to work and try to find that medium? You know,
And maybe Barbara, you could confirm or deny this. Any recommendation you make doesn't stop us from amending our site plan between now and council based on the feedback we've gotten. So let's say you recommended denial. It doesn't mean we can't still make changes based on this hearing before council and potentially get to this middle ground. Vice versa, if you made a recommendation of approval but at a minimum of 10,000 square feet. I think a recommendation of approval with further conditions sounds better. than
Sure it does.
recommendation of denial. So,
Well,
but I think we can live with either. If this ordinance doesn't allow this body to table it, we know we're going to work between now and council to get to a different point.
what I'd like to be able to do, and I think everyone on this commission would prefer, is to be able to send a recommendation to our city council that they have confidence that items have been vetted and that they can easily continue with our recommendation and approve or approve with additional conditions. So as far as our recommendation and you work between now and council to tweak things, that may be the case that you could do that. I would say, you know, in my professional experience, no, once the application is submitted, that's the application that is seen through until the end. I don't know if it's our City of Social Circle ordinance that would allow you that flexibility, because this is what was proposed, this is what was advertised, this is what the public hearing was held on, is what we see
Sure.
before us.
What if there was a recommendation of approval, in theory, with added condition or amended conditions that increased the minimum square footage of all lots to 10,000, that removed the entrance on Chestnut, and that added 50% of the homes needed to have 50% brick?
So,
I think those are three of the big items that we all,
well, and again, that's
Yeah.
why I asked Barbara earlier. This is not, we can do the zoning and do the sketch plan later. This is a zoning and sketch plan altogether.
Right.
Yeah.
So the sketch plan that we have,
Is irrelevant.
if this is not what moves forward, then the zoning can't move forward.
and
That's
Barbara,
correct. That's correct.
But you can,
have
but
an
if you recommend that, those changes, we would amend the site plan and sketch plat between now and the next hearing, which we've done in the past.
What, you're not supposed to not change the whole thing.
Well,
Because,
only based on their recommendations, is
but
what
they
I'm saying.
recommended approval last time.
So therein lies the dilemma, Mr. Seifert, that we have, is that the sketch plan that was submitted
Right.
and advertised and presented is obviously does not meet the requirements that and the conditions that we are considering. For example, the access to Chestnut.
Sure.
If you don't have to access Chestnut and you don't have to widen Chestnut, would you really want to? If you can continue and maybe redraw your phase lines and put the creek crossing in, whether it's a box culvert or a conspan bridge or double-barreled pipe system,
Right.
and your access is just a kind of a modified Z from Spring down to Kane, how many lots does that give you that you already automatically get? And then you come back with the kind of a modified loop and T for
Yeah.
those remaining lots for phase 2.
And maybe I'm just confused. The sketch plat, let's say a sketch plat's approved by council, it cannot materially change for a LDP submittal, otherwise you have to go back through the sketch plat process. But a zoning site plan and sketch plat can be amended between planning commission and council.
But what I think we're all trying to get across is that this either goes or doesn't. And if it doesn't go, then it goes as a request for denial to the council if it
Or-
goes approved, or,
a request to allow you to withdraw
right, and
and,
redo it.
yeah, come back to that.
And if that's the way it has to be, I guess it is what it is. I guess I believe there's an ability to recommend approval with some amended conditions that this board says, like I mentioned, and we would make those changes between now and before the package goes to council.
And I'm not sure this commission is ready to make additional
Okay, fair enough.
amendments or additional
it.
conditions
Pretty much.
without thinking those through.
Got it. Okay.
We don't like to plan by the seat of our pants.
I get it.
We've done that in the past, and it doesn't turn out well sometimes.
Yeah.
So if you have your options, if I'm hearing this commission correctly, I certainly don't want to put a motion and second in the commission's mind, or in their mouths for them, but you have a possibility to withdraw and come back next month. You have a possibility that we could recommend denial, because hearing from my commission members, I'm not hearing that what is presented to us tonight is something that we're comfortable making a recommendation of approval.
Could we ask Barbara, what is the submittal deadline to get on next month's agenda? Has that,
It'll be June the 28th to be on July Planning Commission, so next Monday.
we'll just have to work really fast. I mean, it sounds like that
Well-
is the,
It's a year.
That's right.
only if it's denied by,
He can turn around, whether it, so if it's denied and Mr. Seifert walks away, and someone else comes to put a contract on this property, they could not apply to rezone this property for a year. In Mr. Seifert's case, if it's withdrawn, then he can turn around and resubmit. And again, this is where the dilemma is in this case, because it is a rezoning and sketch plan together. Well, oh, no, that's right. So I think with some communication, I don't want to speak for the site designer, but looking at this sketch plan, if I'm hearing 10,000 square foot lots is something that we're comfortable making a recommendation, and we're hearing that redraw your phase lines so that that secondary entrance is Kane and not taking it out to Chestnut, that may be something that his site designer that can turn around and get the sketch plan back to Barbara, might be something they can do. And that's kind of yes, you have to work quick.
sure, right, and if we don't, it's one more month. I mean, I think the final answer that, yes, we're open to that because it sounds like it makes the most sense and gives the most time for this board to actually make a reasonable
favorable
decision rather than
recommendation.
than a quick snap decision. So, yeah, we would be open to that.
Okay. Now, I'm glad to hear that you're open to that, the willingness to allow our recommendation of withdrawal, should that be the recommendation that comes from this board, but
Right.
that's at least a conversation that we had, so that the board members are aware that, yes, you are comfortable with that recommendation to the city council. Now, the city council, they don't have to follow our recommendation, obviously.
Right.
But I think history has shown that
Yeah.
they would do that, but now they've got their own personalities and their own beliefs, and I can't speak for them, so.
Understood. Right.
At this time, I think we've kicked this around. I think I've muddied the waters more than they should be. Chair will entertain a motion.
I motion that we allow withdrawal and give the applicant time to redraw the sketch plat with the conditions we have spoken about and resubmit to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. That was a very well put motion.
Second.
We have a motion and 2 seconds. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Mr. Propal,
That was a second.
do we have any old business, Ms. Barber?
the, highway corridor. So Mr. Poss is going to make an application to go to HPC and get that approval because they cannot find the red tiles that are on the gift shop, and they are wanting to replace that with architectural shingles, just like the restaurant is, which is still closed, but it is leaking pretty bad, and they had a call this morning because one of the clay shingles broke glass, and police got called out because the alarm went off. So Mr. Boss is going to go to HPC, but he would like to go because this requirement of the highway corridor, you guys, once you make your certificate of appropriateness recommendation, it has to go to council for final approval. And the only way he could get on the July 20th mayor and council was if you guys voted to have a special call meeting between the July 13th and the 20th, is to have one to make a recommendation so they could actually hear it at the council on July 20th. Now, if we don't, that's fine. He would go to HPC on the 13th of July, and he would go to the Planning Commission in July, at the end of July, the 27th or 28th, and then go to Mayor and Council on the August meeting. But that means he has to tarp it and secure it, but he cannot replace it until he has his public hearings.
You'll be out of town. So Mr. Perpall has stated he's not available.
And that's fine.
How many
I just told him I would ask.
how many items are on that historic preservation agenda for the 13th?
I think we have 2. And one is just a FYI thing. It's about the windows in Pinnacle Bank. It's really not a HPC. They're just replacing rotten window.
Have you already advertised that HPC meeting?
No, sir.
This might be a little out of the ordinary, but is there any reason if we can
Oh,
have it? Go ahead.
That was the other suggestion. If you guys want to do it on the 13th, we could have the HPC, the one thing we have, cut that short because it's just FYI on the other things, and I've already told them about it. So they would know when they saw that work being done, it was just a ordinary property maintenance. And then we could close that meeting, and then you could open your meeting and have that right behind it. They meet at 6 in the community room. So by 6:30, we could be holding the corridor meeting on the 13th.
Okay. I can say I'm open to that idea.
I would just need to have a quorum there on
Yeah,
the 13th.
that's the dilemma is having a quorum, and that's a Tuesday, July 13th. Mr. Paul already stated he's out of town. Would you like to, or if you don't mind, send out an email, and if we can get a quorum, if we get enough people via email saying that they can attend, then I don't mind having that one item on a quorum for a simple COA for roof replacement.
Okay. I will send out an email tomorrow.
And I see Mike and Valerie are checking their phones, so they probably need to do like I do and check other locations to see if we're not supposed to be somewhere else that day and time.
That's true. That's true.
That's because you. Yep. And you can get a call any minute to drop and go, so. Well, thank you, Ms. Barber. If you'll send that out, and if we can get enough members that can reply to attend, then I don't see a hardship in that for that simple COA. If there's no other new business items, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
that, I'll make that motion.
We got a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Motion passed unanimous. This meeting's adjourned.